So I need some help, please, with this whole Israel-Gaza thing. I do not know what to believe. I don't know if someone has an article or some source or book or a video to watch, or it's just something where I can know accurate information on what's going on over there.
I'm glad you're watching. Thank you for stopping by. Some days back, I saw some videos of Gen Z and millennials giving reasons why they should not vote for Biden.
This next election is the first one that I will be eligible to vote in if everything goes right, and I am not voting for Joe Biden. I will do my civic duty. I will help people register the vote, as I always do, but you know what? I'm going to make them really fucking think about whether or not they want to vote for a person that co-signed genocide, that co-signed ethnic cleansing and funded it.
Y'all, let me know if I don't know what I'm talking about, or if I'm bananas, or if this is just out there. I won't be offended, I promise. But why do I feel like the U.S. is plotting? I just feel like there's something even more sinister happening underneath.
We can criticize the Israeli government, settlements. There is nuance, there is discourse. That's totally fine. What there is not nuance about is people coming into a country and attacking people, civilians in their home, murdering people, celebrating about it. You can 100% find things online today that will change your mind. Like, they are disturbing. Like, I don't mean change your mind about the situation. I mean, like, change your brain chemistry. They are so upsetting. And let me tell you the best part about all of this that people seem to really forget. If you are living in a free country, specifically in America, Hamas also hates you and would do the exact same thing that they're doing to Israelis to you and your friends and your family if they had the access or the opportunity.
Yes.
I guess
I voted for Biden in 2020. I have never liked him, and when I first heard that he was going to be the Democratic candidate, I said that I wasn't going to vote in 2020, but I felt like it was important, and I felt like he was the lesser of two evils, and I still feel that. But after today, I cannot imagine voting for him in 2024, because at this point, the lesser of two evils for whom?
I must say that I appreciate so much the freedom of expression that people are enjoying in America. It's not like some of these countries here that people think they're paradise when people are dying inside. It's good that people are raising such questions so that they can understand the truth about their nation. And it's about time that America understand the history of their country and also understand the diplomatic side and history of their country.
So in this moment, we must be crystal clear. We stand with Israel.
Does the United States support Israel? Well, there's a history, and a very interesting one. It actually goes back a long time. One thing to remember is that Christian Zionism is a very powerful force, which goes back long before Jewish Zionism. In England, particularly, Christian Zionism was a powerful force among British elites.
So Yellen gets asked about America's support for Israel. So take a look at this video clip.
Is it fair to say that America's support for Israel is unconditional? Or are there some conditions based on what might unfold in the days ahead?
I think America stands behind Israel, period. We stand with Israel. America has also made clear to Israel, we're working very closely with the Israelis, that they have a right to defend themselves, but it's important to try to spare innocent civilian lives to the maximum extent possible.
At the Middle East, I think it's about time we stop, those of us who support, as most of us do, Israel in this body, for apologizing for our support for Israel. There's no apology to be made. None. It is the best $3 billion investment we make. Were there not an Israel, the United States of America would have to invent an Israel to protect her interest in the region.
The only reason that humanitarian aid is getting to innocent Palestinians in Gaza right now is because of President Biden and his administration. Israel is now admitting that they are allowing humanitarian aid into Gaza because of pressure from the Biden administration. The defense minister of Israel was pressed on why the government agreed to allow humanitarian aid into Gaza from Egypt before the hostages have returned. And he said the Americans insisted, and we are not in a place where we can refuse them. We rely on them for planes and military equipment. What are we supposed to do? Tell them no? So Israel isn't all that fond of humanitarian aid getting to the innocent people of Palestine, but President Biden pressured them on the phone. He's saying, like, you got to open this border and allow this aid to get to these people. Like depriving innocent people who are not connected to Hamas of food, water, and electricity to try to get hostages back is just not morally right. And that has pretty much been President Biden's strategy throughout this entire conflict that's happening in the Middle East. Publicly, President Biden has been very pro-Israel because the United States is allies with Israel, but privately, he's been trying to hold them back, making sure that human rights in Gaza are not violated. Again, for example, he got humanitarian aid into Gaza. He also convinced the Israelis to turn the water back on in South Gaza. Like, I see a lot of people on the left criticizing President Biden's approach to Palestine, but this is not an easy issue. We are allies with Israel, and we have to maintain that allyship while also protecting the innocent people in Palestine, which personally, I think President Biden has done a pretty good job of. And again, Biden is not God. He can't fly. He doesn't have ultimate power over these countries to convince them to do some things and not others. It's just not the way the presidency works. The criticisms of President Biden's administration in the past week have been incredibly unwarranted, and I promise people there are deeper meanings to every single move the United States is taking here, and the idea that Biden just loves seeing innocent people lose their lives is insane, given the fact that he's doing every single thing he can to help innocent people on both sides.
So there's a couple reasons why the U.S. has to provide support to Israel. Firstly, they're a strong strategic partner in the Middle East, and we have similar democratic views. Secondly, we have a long-standing relationship with them since they were recognized as a state in 1948. Lastly, and most importantly probably, we do about $50 billion of trade with them per year, so that is very important to the U.S. and what they bring into our economy. We can't afford to lose such a valuable partner in trade within the Middle East at this point. Let me know what you guys think. Am I right or wrong? Leave me a comment or shoot.
United States support of Israel is a big reason why foreign terrorists from the Middle East typically attack the United States. If it weren't for the United States, Israel probably would have been taken over because it's such a hostile territory. So that part of the world looks at the United States as an obstacle because they arm the Israelis and they're a very strong ally, and they know that if they try to take back Israel, there's going to be some serious consequences for the United States. So this is why the United States and countries that support Israel typically come under attack from extremist groups from the Middle East.
Funny thing about all this is I think America would actually have more allies in the Middle East if it stops supporting Israel. See, a lot of the anti-Americanism sentiment that's in the Middle East stems from America supporting Israel. Now, I'm not saying this is the only reason they hate America. There are so many other reasons, but this is a very big one. Israel spends a lot of time inviting American and Western politicians to come over so that they can tour them around the country. And what they do is they invite politicians, presidents, and say, oh, look how developed Israel is, and look at all the things that we have built in this country. Look at our healthcare system. Look at our tourism. There was nothing on this land. We came here and built all of this. And then they'll point at the Palestinians and the people in Gaza and say, look, they hate us because we're Jews, and they hate us because we're so successful, and they hate us because they're Muslims, and of course furthering the Islamophobia that America already has. They will give you every single detail about every single Hamas attack and not mention a single word about the occupation and what they're doing in the West Bank or even to people in Gaza. It's always in self-defense, and they'll repeat that over and over and over again. We need to defend ourselves because this is the only home that we have, or else we will get wiped out. They firmly believe this. Israel also has one of the most formidable intelligence agencies, like top-notch, and I'm not going to say their name, starts with an M, ends with a D, but in exchange for that American protection and support, Israel does give them information, any relevant intelligence that they collect from that region. It's really sad that all of this could have been prevented if Israel had just stopped denying the genocidal history and just given Palestinians equal rights in the first place. And then they wouldn't have to lie and keep lying about their history and keep trying to cover things up. And then they wouldn't have had to pull America into this. But what do I know? I'm not a politician. U.S. foreign policy I highly recommend that you read this book. If you don't have time to read it, read a summary of it or just do some general research on the Israel lobby. This book was very controversial when it first came out because a lot of Zionists were mad at it because, of course, it exposed a lot of things that they don't want the world to know about. The Israel lobby, also known as the Zionist lobby, is exactly what it sounds like. It's a group of lobbyists who are made up of also different groups and organizations and even corporations who are pro-Israel. And their sole purpose is to influence the American government to be pro-Israel. So just like you have lobbyists like the NRA and Big Pharma who are always trying to influence your politicians to pass policies that benefits them, same thing these guys are doing. This group is arguably the most powerful lobby in the world. If they endorse your campaign, you are winning the presidential elections. Like, almost every time. They have a 98% success rate. They look for candidates that are pro-Israel, and if there isn't one, they find a way to make you pro-Israel. They fund your campaign, you win the elections, you pass the policies that they like. Simple. AIPAC is a member of this lobby, and that stands for American Israel Public Affairs Committee. And you also have Christians United for Israel, which has like 7 million members. So it's not just Jewish organizations. You have a lot of Christians who are actually extremely Zionist. And these organizations have a vast pool of donors, and we're talking anywhere between nonprofit organizations and billion-dollar corporations. So you have all these pro-Israel groups or Zionist-owned groups who are donating to this lobby, who in turn donate to presidential campaigns. And I don't know how they do it, but they somehow convince all these politicians that they put in office that everything that's good for Israel is also good for America. And if you don't agree with that, you are anti-Semitic. They do not tolerate any criticism of Israel whatsoever. The support for Israel has to be unconditional. Whatever you say against Israel will be used against you. You'll be labeled as an anti-Semite, and you will lose whatever power that they have given you. It's probably the reason why you have people like AOC, who was once very publicly vocal about Palestine, but once it was time to vote for funding Israel, she backpedaled and voted yes anyway. They go against any politician who doesn't support Israel, and they somehow find ways to sabotage their careers. It is so bad that if you even try to talk about where they get all their funds from, or if you even make a mention of how a lot of major news outlets are owned by Zionists, they will demonize you and call you anti-Semitic. There is so much to touch on over here, from the wars that they have helped influence to the narrative that they have controlled about Palestinians to make Israel always look like the victim, that, you know, it's just too much to fit in this one video. So I highly recommend that you just read the book or do a lot of research on this. But I want to close in saying this. It's really ironic that so many people assume Israel is like the puppet or the baby of America, when really it's America's daddy.
So this comment is about what's happening between Israel and Palestine right now and the United States and President Biden's response to it. They said, buddy, we can do more. We are not the good guy here because we threw them a bone regarding the aid that we gave to innocent Palestinians. And I actually think this is a pretty fair criticism of the United States right now. There's a lot of nuance here. It's not really President Biden's fault, so let me explain. The other day, President Biden announced that we are giving $100 million in humanitarian assistance for innocent Palestinians in Gaza, and we've now delivered that aid to those people. Now, the reason the aid wasn't more than $100 million is because it was coming from a pre-existing fund. So if Biden wanted more money for humanitarian aid, he would have to go to Congress and ask for more money. And that is actually what President Biden did. He sent a $106 billion aid request to Congress for Israel, Ukraine, and Gaza. And in this request for money, it includes $61.4 billion for Ukraine, incorporating replenishment of U.S. weapon stocks, $14.3 billion for Israel, and $9.15 billion for unspecified humanitarian assistance in both countries and the blockaded Gaza Strip Palestinian territory. Like, part of that $9 billion in humanitarian aid that Biden is asking for is going to Gaza. He wants to provide more, but he can't just do it. He needs congressional approval. Like, truly, I wish that Biden could provide this humanitarian aid to these countries when they need it, but unfortunately, that's not the way the U.S. government works. The fact of the matter is, this money request is not going to be granted probably anytime soon because there's not a House of Representatives. We don't have a Speaker of the House because of Republican chaos. And the Republicans are going to be the ones likely to vote against it. So if you want more humanitarian aid for Gaza, call your Republican representatives and let them know to get their act together and to vote for this money package. There's a lot of emotion in regards to what's happening in the Middle East. Understandably so. It's tragic. It's terrible. The loss of innocent life anytime is truly awful. And it is truly a shame that the government can't work faster and that the Republicans can't get their act together so we can actually address this issue. social media and said things like this and encouraged their followers not to vote to do a couple things for me. Go to every single family who lost a child in a mass shooting and tell them, yeah, I didn't vote for Biden, even though he passed the first piece of major gun legislation in over 30 years, and I let Trump win. Go to the little girls, the teenagers in Republican states who were assaulted and had to have their assaulter's baby and tell them, yeah, I didn't vote for Joe Biden, even though he's appointed pro-choice judges every single opportunity he's had, and I let Donald Trump, the guy who overturned Roe v. Wade, win the presidency. Go to coastal towns around the country, especially where people are suffering from climate change, and tell them, yeah, I didn't vote for President Biden, who invested the most in fighting climate change ever. I let Donald Trump and his pro-fossil fuel agenda win. And then go to the seniors on Medicare who now have their insulin cap at $35 a month because of President Biden, and tell them, yeah, I didn't vote for President Biden, even though he passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which did that, and now Donald Trump is going to come into office and undo all of that progress. Oh, and go to all the veterans who were exposed to toxic burn pits while serving abroad, who now have more health care because of President Biden's PACT Act, and tell them, yeah, Biden expanded your health care, but I didn't vote for him, and now Trump is going to undo that. Oh, and finally, go to all of the Muslim Americans who are going to be deported under Donald Trump's new Muslim ban that he's been talking about in the past couple of days and say, yeah, I could have kept you guys here by voting for President Biden, but I didn't. I didn't vote at all, and Donald Trump got into office, and now he's deporting all of you guys. So sorry. So genuinely, for this far-left coalition of people who are like, I'm not going to vote for Biden in 2024, if Trump wins, you will be part of the reason why. You will be part of the reason why, and you'll have to answer to all of the people who were affected by Trump's win and his terrible policy that he's going to implement.
Check out this video. In his 1972 essay, Take Me to the Water, James Baldwin wrote about leaving the US but refusing to go live in Israel, saying, and if I had fled to Israel, a state created for the purpose of protecting Western interests, I would have been in a yet tighter bind. On which side of Jerusalem would I have decided to live?
If we look at the Middle East, I think it's about time we stop, those of us who support, as most of us do, Israel in this body, for apologizing for our support for Israel. There's no apology to be made. None. It is the best $3 billion investment we make. Were there not an Israel, the United States of America would have to invent an Israel to protect her interest in the region. The United States would have to go out and invent an Israel.
This is a message to all you Johnny-come-lately wannabe Bernie bros that are threatening not to vote for Joe Biden and I'm not going to vote at all. Really, girl? You have no clue what you're doing a year from now. Who knows? Maybe none of us will be alive. You're such... The fact that you're planning on not doing something in a year from now is like cringingly embarrassing. Why don't you just take your life a day at a time and try to be spiritual? That's the spiritual approach to life, as opposed to your grandstanding, bullshit, annoying, pretentious, wannabe Bernie broism by threatening not to vote for a Democrat, you schmucks.
Allow me to wrap up this video at this particular point. Remember to like the video, subscribe kindly. Also share. Don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comment section. Also, keep the comments modest kindly.